SDK.finance. In the previous video, we prepared images for deployment in Kubernetes. In this video, we will configure a Helm chart to deploy our application in Kubernetes. We will upload our Helm chart, navigate to the chart directory, and start configuring it. If we look at the contents of the charts folder, we will see two subcharts, frontend and backend. We can also review the set of available parameters that can be configured later in our RootValues.yaml file. This will be useful for more detailed configuration before deployment. The RootValues.yaml file contains the main parameters that need to be set for our application to launch correctly after deployment in Kubernetes. Now, let's take a closer look at the variables. First, we have global variables. This means that their values can be used simultaneously in both subcharts. This is important because the frontend and backend interact with each other, so some parameters must be the same for both subcharts. The first variable is environment, which defines the environment name. For example, it can be development, staging, production, or any other environment, depending on your needs. Next, we specify the root domain that will be used for our environment. Then, we define subdomains for our components. We use default subdomains, but you can change them according to your preferences. Next is the SSL section. We created images without using SSL certificates, so we leave the value as false everywhere. In this case, all component communication within Kubernetes will occur without SSL. Then, we set up parameters for connecting to our private Docker repository, where we pushed the images in the previous video. Now, let's configure the frontend. If we don't need it, we can set enable to false, and the frontend will not be deployed. Other parameters can be omitted. However, in this example, we will deploy the frontend. We use an Nginx-based ingress controller in the cluster. We also use Kubernetes Cert-Manager to automatically request Let's Encrypt certificates for our domains. Although internal cluster traffic between components operates without SSL, external access is provided via HTTPS. Therefore, we need to configure the issuer, which automatically requests and renews SSL certificates for our subdomains. In this example, we use AWS Route 53 for DNS. You can also configure an issuer for another provider by following the official documentation. In this case, set issuer.enable to false and specify your issuer's name in the name parameter. Next, we specify the Docker image for the frontend that we created in the previous video. Frontend configuration is now complete. Let's move on to the backend. First, we specify the images for Swagger and the backend, which we built in the previous video. In company name, enter your company name. In API host, specify the API subdomain and the main domain. In company logo, provide a public link to your company's logo. Now, let's configure email settings. In this example, we will use an SMTP email service, so we specify all the necessary parameters. Special attention should be given to the default user email suffix parameter. It defines the domain that will be used when creating all default users during the first launch and initialization of the application. I have prepared all the necessary parameters in advance. Let's now look at the final version. It is necessary to specify the connection parameters for the MongoDB and PostgreSQL database servers. After configuring all parameters, we can proceed with deploying the application in Kubernetes. We create the required namespace and install the Helm chart. After deployment, we check if our pods have started. If the pods are running, we verify that the application is up by checking the logs. Now we can open the front-end and try logging in as an administrator. Don't forget to create and point your subdomains to the correct address if this is not done automatically. If the login is successful, our application has been successfully deployed in Kubernetes. That's all. Thank you for watching.